All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Decoding Oracle Migration, Insights into Scope and ROI. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Cecilia Acetti, and I will be your host. Before we get started, we wanted to let you know that this webinar is being recorded. So you're going to get a copy of the recording when we send you a thank you email after the event. And then your lines are muted, but you are able to ask questions throughout the session. And also you can email us whenever works so we can answer any questions that we might not be able to answer because of time. Today's webinar is part of a series of webinars about migrating from legacy databases. As you can see on the screen, we have two more coming up. The next one would be about the change management aspects of legacy migration. And then the last one would be a more technical one on the aspects of the migration too. You have the dates here. And if you haven't yet, we invite you to register for the rest of the series. Today, I'm joined by Mark Linster and Matt Lewandowski, and I will let them introduce themselves and kick us off. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cecilia, and welcome to today's webinar. So I'm Mark Linster. I'm an EDB fellow. I used to be the CTO of the company, and I've been intimately involved in many migrations for our customers.
And I'm Matt Lewandowski. I'm the product manager for migration technology here at EDB. I've been in EDB for a little while and served a couple different roles and actually been involved in helping customers with migrations. In previous work, I'd also involved with application migrations. So let's get started. For today, we want to talk about doing migrations at scale across your estate for legacy databases to Postgres in our case. With the understanding, I want to help you understand there's a process behind all that. And then we'll give you some insights into how you understand what your database estate looks like and what are good candidates to migrate. And then we'll help you prioritize those targets, talk a little bit about the return on investment and how you define that. And since it is a process, you'll have multiple databases you want to migrate. We'll talk about establishing a backlog and the working through that backlog and to get your final end state of having a migrated estate of databases. So let's start with, it's simple. When you have a large number of databases you want to migrate, you need a process to help you with that. If you're migrating just one or two databases, and that's where we started with a lot of the organizations that we support, but they've come to us and asked us to help them move their whole estate, because that's where they're going to see their largest return of investment, where it's going to meet their modernization and innovation strategies that they have in place. So to do that, you need to take a first look at your database estate and see which are the good candidates for migrations. And some of that's going to be like an early filtering of that estate. So you're going to identify what is suitable right away. And then from there, you'll have a slightly smaller set of databases that'll be candidates. And you'll perform an assessment of those, a quick assessment to just get a high-level understanding of the level of effort and the complexity of performing those migrations. And you can use that information then to feed into your return on investment analysis and more detailed estimations. And you can also use that to develop a prioritized backlog. Once you have that backlog in place, it's just a process of working through all those migrations, conducting more detailed level of effort estimates, as well as complexity assessments, and then performing the actual migrations of your database code objects, your stored your tables and such, as well as the data that resides in all those tables. And then it's an iterative process. You'll go get it done for one set of databases, and you'll proceed to get them all completed, and eventually you'll have a migrated estate. So first in that journey there is to understand your database estate. What we're dealing with here is that you want to identify the applications and the databases that support them. And you having an understanding of what are the application names, whether these applications are commercial off the shelf or not, is key to understanding what's suitable or not, how many databases and schemas per application. That's helps with understanding how difficult that might be. We'll take a look at what the primary use cases of your applications are. Is it, and the database that supports it? Are they going to a data lake? Is it a data mart? Is it an operational data store? Is it system of record? Are you, deploying to mobile and edge? Having a good understanding of all that will help us prioritize which ones to work on first. Also, you want to look at data volume and the percentage of read-write transactions to understand, like, again, what is suitable and what are, how would you use that information to prioritize your backlog? Also, the life cycle stage, really important to know that. Consider, like, you may have applications that you're planning to sunset anyways. Those wouldn't be ones that you might want to consider for migration at all. Also, you want to look at the database technology itself. Are you talking about Oracle databases, DB2 databases, SQL Server, Sybase, and what are the differences in considering those when migrating to, say, Postgres? And then I think to really be successful, you want to make sure that you have your application teams lined up to be part of that. So establishing that organizational alignment is going to be important as you look at your database estate. And then also whether there's suitable test harnesses to, once you've migrated that database, that sets of databases, to verify that they work and that all non-functional requirements are met as well. That's important probably from the perspective of once you start establishing a backlog, that you can identify how much other of those components you need to put in place.
And let me just chime in here, Matt, because
Sure.
I think this is a really, really important point. All too often, people think that, oh yeah, Postgres Advanced Server from EDB is just like Oracle. It understands PLSQL, understands the drivers, etc. So why do I need to get the application team involved? Well, you do need the functional and non-functional verification, and you can't do that without the involvement of the application team. So even if there's no changes required, which is often the case, you still need them to be there to make sure that things perform the way they should perform, and that's why you need a test harness. And all too often, we see situations where that gets thought of too late. The database migration is fine, but the application team hasn't scheduled in the time necessary to help verify that everything is actually working the way it should, and then you waste a lot of time. There's a lot of frustration. So bringing that in and asking that question early on in the process is really important.
Yeah, very good point. Thank you, Mark. So when we think about our applications and the databases, this, is definitely a factor to consider, is that some applications will use multiple databases and some databases will serve multiple applications. It's, some cases, maybe there'd be a one-to-one correspondence, but as you start to plan out your estate migration, this is definitely something to think about. Like, do I have to move multiple databases and multiple schemas to support an application? Or in the other case, do I have multiple applications that would be affected by me migrating the database? And can I do that all at once? So it'll affect your how you establish the backlog for performing those migrations.
And then maybe one thing that often is not clear, but when databases, if you have a couple of hundred databases, they tend to be interconnected. Like over time, things like DB Link get established. Yeah. And that causes this conceptual spaghetti that makes it almost impossible to move unless you have a good Oracle compatible solution where you can take one database that serves one application out, move it, and everybody else around it thinks, oh yeah, I'm still talking to an Oracle database. In reality, it has become a Postgres database. So if you don't have something like a DB Link compatibility, very often this conceptual spaghetti is really, really hard to untangle. And then you're looking at these big bang migrations, which are, that's usually not a recommended approach.
Right. So to reduce that complexity, that's an area of like compatibility that we offer as a DB Links. That's a good point. Mark, you have some
So
comments on
let
this
me
one?
talk about this. This is one of my favorite slides when I work with customers. It's really important where Postgres fits to understand that and have a really good grasp of where you should use Postgres. Yes, Postgres is a great database, and I know that when I talk to dyed in the wool Postgres experts, they say, well, but I can use Postgres for everything. And that is true. They can. But is it really the best tool for everything? Is it the best way to get started with a complicated application that stretches what Postgres can do? No. So that's why we're highlighting here very clearly that when you do your database estate, that we suggest using this classification or a similar classification of data lake, data warehouse, operational data mart, operational data store, transactional system, system of engagement, so supporting websites and social media systems, and then edge computing and mobile computing. And in many of these environments, Postgres is absolutely the best thing to use. But for example, on edge computing, there are other databases that rule the roost. I mean, SQLite is usually what's being used on a small edge device. Postgres, while not really heavyweight, is heavier than SQLite or other lighter databases. The same thing on data lakes. Yes, there are people who have built data lakes with Postgres, but the leading technology, the leading way of doing it is to use something with Parquet or something that is like Databricks or Snowflake or Teradata, something like that. So when you look at your estate, the red area on this picture is really what I would suggest prioritizing. And when you get really good at it, right, then you can start looking, okay, can I stretch Postgres into areas like a data warehouse? You may say, hey, why can't I use Postgres in the data warehouse right now? Well, for example, it has materialized views, but it does not have self-refreshing materialized views. So that's a disadvantage, makes analytics tasks more complicated. In data marts, it's usually not such a big deal because you can rebuild the data, the view dynamically. So, you get sufficient performance. But maybe on a corporate data mart with, a petabyte of data, you might stretch it and it would be very hard to make Postgres successful in there.
Yeah, with that in mind, I think we are sort of exploring how do we provide more capability to support those data warehouse and data lake needs. So I think that's
absolutely.
Stay tuned for that. Stay tuned.
Yes. Thanks, Matt, for bringing that up. So there are a lot of developments going on, and you will see soon from EDB some interesting announcements where we stretch the envelope for Postgres towards the left in that picture, towards the data warehouse and the data lake. So yes, we are very aware that that's a new frontier for Postgres, and you will see a lot of activity in that space.
Very good.
Oops, that was one click too many.
I'm sorry, Mark.
Okay.
You move. I'll
Okay, so degrees of compatibility, right? When you remember Matt's process where he said, okay, we're going to look at what is there, your whole estate. Then we're going to say which part of that estate is a good fit for Postgres. And then we're going to say, okay, now that we know what should be migrated, let's figure out what is easy, what is hard, and what are the don'ts. Because there are some don'ts, and you need to be aware of those. For example, if you have a commercial off-the-shelf application and the vendor does not support Postgres, even if you can make it work, that's an absolute don't. Because if you have a problem, you're going to be on your own. The vendor will not support you, right? So those commercial off-the-shelf, if the vendor doesn't support it, that's a don't. Then we classify it into very easy, medium, hard, very hard. And we have a tool that we use, that our services team uses, that in an engagement would be made available to the project. And that then allows us to classify applications in their database and their databases into these different tiers. And what's important here for everybody to understand is that based on our experience, over 60% of all the Oracle migrations to EDB Postgres, which is a version of Postgres that understands PLSQL, over 20%, over 60% of those migrations can be done in less than 20 days. Some of them actually really, and it's not a joke, in a few days. All it takes to move the DDL across and then move the data. And I say for the data, give yourself some time. Our guideline is about 50 gigabyte per hour as far as the transfer speed goes. If you're on a fast network or on a super fast rack, you can exceed that. But you can see that for any database of any size, you need some time to get the data across. But the key message here is that if you have a large estate of Oracle databases, you can see that the majority can be moved to EDB Postgres Advanced Server rather quickly and with very, very little effort. And when we run our tool, the EDB compatibility assessment tool, together with our services team, you see very easily what falls into those categories. And then you can also see which of these applications has how many Oracle cores, how much rack, how much Golden Gate, how many standby servers you have, etc. So you can easily see what is easy and will make a dent into my Oracle bill.
I just want to comment on this is that, even like majority of them do fit in the easy and moderate categories. Just because something says it's hard or very hard doesn't mean it shouldn't be done. I mean, if it's important to the business, we should tackle that and go do it. So you just get to go with your eyes open that there's a little bit more work usually associated with those. So.
And the warning sign here is why we say start with the easy ones that are worth it, is because the one application that usually the CIO, the director thinks about is the old app that Jimmy inherited from Betsy. It came from Infosys and nobody has a documentation. It just barely runs. Everybody hates the application. Well, that's probably not the one to start with, right? That is the one that you do after when you're in the second or third or fourth sprint and you understand your sizing, you found your footing, you know how this is going to work. So don't start there. Start with things that are easy and worth it. And that's what this analysis helps you find. We did it again.
Okay, there we go again. So Mark mentioned the tool that we have, EDB Compatibility Assessment Tool. This does a quick assessment of your state. You basically point to the databases in your state. You give them a little bit of information about the application associated with those databases, as well as answer a few select questions about it. And out of that, you get a categorization of the compatibility class, if you would, the complexity of that migration, and then even a level of effort of associated with migrating that. You at a high level, it's going to give you a listing by application name, and identify the schemas, the number of Oracle kind of features that are in use there, and how often they occur within the database. And it'll also give you an estimate of the average number of hours to convert applications of that sort. And with that ranking, either numeric or the qualitative, very easy, medium, hard, or very hard, popping out of all that. What our experience tells us is that even though this is a quick assessment, not necessarily looking at the specific compatibility, our estimates are within 20% in most cases. So this is a good first step in identifying migration targets. You can drill down using that tool into getting more details into specific schemas that are in there, and whether there's incompatible features there or not, how many occurrences of all those are. So you can get to see a picture which led to the scoring that we gave for these databases. Once you have that, you can start to build an ROI. The one thing that wasn't shown on the screens there previously was things like the number of cores associated with that. That's also available as details from the collection of information. Mark, I'll turn it over to you to talk about ROI.
Yeah. The ROI is really important. You may think, hey, this is a bunch of techies. Why are they talking about the ROI? The thing is, when Matt said this is a process, If somebody has 500 databases, and let's say 200 of those turn out to be, yeah, they're good migration targets and they're not end of life, and really we're going to clean this up, right? Well, even the fastest team that is large will work on that for some time. So understanding that it's worth doing the work, and then always as you do the work, documenting how much money you have saved the business, how much new flexibility you have created, how much cloud capability you have created by getting rid of the legacy ball and chain. That is really important. So the business case or the ROI is not just a one-time thing that gets you the budget. It is the tool that as you work through the backlog, as you go through the sprints, this is how you show that it's worth keeping you funded and that you're really making a difference. Now, in order to put the ROI together, there's a couple of data elements that you need, and they are being collected in what we said before, which is things like the core counts, what is easy, what is hard, but also the labor cost, right? Because this does take work. And some of the work you will probably ask EDB to do, maybe just for the first couple of iterations, and afterwards you do it yourself, or you do it with your in-house systems integrator. That's what we would recommend. I mean, that you take on some of this work yourself, because over time you want to develop the Postgres skills in-house. You want to understand the cores. You want to understand how many of these are on high availability tools, because RAC, as you know, is very expensive. Oracle's Data Guard is a lot less expensive. Golden Gate also costs money. So you need to understand what is the high availability tooling that is being used, so you can understand, okay, when I map this from, let's say, Oracle RAC to Postgres Distributed, this is how much money I'll save. And then the other part is the timeline. Because on the slide before, you saw that, yeah, it takes some time to do this work. So for some time, you will still have Oracle running, but there will be less and less of it, okay? So, some customers say, yeah, my plan is to get this done in 3 years. Good, so we have to plan this cash flow and this return over a multi-year period. But having this ROI is really important, because as you'll learn in the other webinars that Cecilia talked about, this is not just a technology problem. This is also a problem of getting and keeping the support of the whole company, of the application teams to work with you, of the business to give you the windows necessary to cut over, the retraining that is needed, the integration with the security infrastructure, all that kind of stuff. And the ROI and constantly documenting that you are providing value to the business is really important. So ROI is not a one-time activity.
All right. So with the ROI, in place, and you have your other categorizations of effort as well as complexity, you can start to build a backlog. You identify, again, your applications that you want to tackle first, the schemas and databases that are associated with that. You look at that ranking very easy through very hard, and you'll have also a high level effort and cost estimate at that point. And then you can look at what your projection of your license cost reduction will be over time. And then you can build a priority. So as Mark has said a couple of times, we want to recommend that you would start with the very easy. And what this does is it helps you build skills, which are very important to improve your processes. And also it gives you time, especially if you have no experience with Postgres, to get really familiar with Postgres and operating and maintaining it, get used to the tools. Then you can start to introduce these more complex scenarios with more stricter or higher availability requirements, advanced replication needs, and things of that nature. But so you build a backlog, and then you start to work on that backlog. And what we would recommend is 1 to 5 applications. Maybe initially it's the first 1 or 2, and you start working on that. No, don't bite off more than that. And then, work through those, and you'll get faster with each iteration. You should. You'll have, as you go through that iteration, things you'll do is you'll get a more detailed level of effort because you're going to do a further complexity assessment using tools like EDB's migration portal, or even our SQL Assess tool, which is a beta capability right now, but that can help you identify the compatibility of your SQL statements that are executed by your database, which is an important thing that sometimes gets overlooked. It's not just the database itself, it's also the interactions with that database, and that gets realized through SQL statements through your application. I also want to look at performance-related things. So Oracle, as an example, has automated workload reports that give you some information about which queries run the most and how fast they perform. And this is information, once you've migrated your database and your application over, that you can use to start to tune the system to be able to meet those performance objectives as well. And then you need to consider, like, what is the architecture you're using? Are you using existing architecture? Do you need to go, are you going to, like, say, from on-premise to cloud? If you're going to stay on-premise, do you need to have additional hardware bots? Is there any other thing like that needs to be considered? And then how much automation you want to build in there. Probably initially, it'll be a little bit more manual work. And as you go over time, your processes will help you develop automation so that you can more quickly go through that. And then Mark mentioned earlier about the plan for like 50 gigabytes per hour, usually for snapshot type data replications. If you have larger databases that can't afford a lot of downtime, maybe you need to consider some change in data capture mechanisms. And we have tools to help with that. And also, you can't overlook being able to verify the functional and non-functional characteristics of your system. So, plan for that as part of the sprint there.
Yeah. And Matt said sprint. I believe in Scrum. And so if you're using Scrum, I encourage you to start adding concepts of burn down, velocity, etc. Because as you go through those sprints, you will start to understand your velocity. You will start to understand how fast you will burn down the backlog, etc. So the whole iteration concept is really useful and allows you to use techniques like Scrum to make this a much more predictable process.
Right. Very good. So just to wrap it up, this is we've sort of stepped through the main parts of this process here, from analyzing your database estate, getting, like sort of the big picture. Here's, say you have 100 databases you want to move. Here's the 85 that are suitable because these 15 are, sunsetted, or maybe we know that there are COTS applications that are only supported on that legacy database. And then you've gone through and done a quick assessment, identified a high level complexity and as well as initial level of effort associated with that. And then you built your return on investment. And from there, you'll be able to build a backlog. And when you build that backlog, you can just start to work through it using sprint techniques, as we suggest here, getting more detailed as far as like the compatibility, and then working off any incompatibilities and migrating your DDL over to the destination database, and then migrating the data associated with that, and performing all the verification, both functional verification and non-functional data verification, also consistency of the data, and make sure that it all migrated smoothly. And then you'll have, in the end, a application that's running on Postgres at that point. And as you go through the iterations, you'll have more and more of those until you finally meet your objective of having your state migrated over. So that's why we say it's a process.
Thank you. Thanks, Matt. So yes, as Matt said, it's a process, and please consider it as that. It's not a one-time short technical project, even though the technical part might be easy. It's the whole rest that often takes a lot of time. It's been done before, meaning you're not the first one to try to migrate from Oracle to Postgres. We've been doing this for 20 years. This is, in fact, the 20th year for EDB. And for 20 years, we've been helping customers migrate from Oracle to Postgres. And we've done this very, very successfully. There are proven artifacts, articles, practices, tools. They are available. I would highly recommend don't try this from scratch. It's not necessary. 20 years ago, yes, it was necessary, or maybe even 10 years ago. But today, there are such good tools available, such proven practices, use them. For example, I'll point you here to the ROI calculator on EDB's website, where you can easily say, hey, I got this many cores, what's my cost, etc. And you'll get an idea, is this worth it? What is it going to cost? How long is it going to take? So I'm turning it back over to Cecilia now for a couple of questions.
Awesome. Thank you both. So we got a couple of questions. First one would be, are these migration capabilities available in the EDB cloud?
Yes. And Matt, you're the product man.
Yeah, so we, for sure, the core capability we have, especially for Oracle migrations, is going to be Oracle compatibility. And in that case, we have a service called Big Animal that offers EDB Postgres Advanced Server clusters, and also like the HA requirements that you might have. You have a database as a service basically offering for that. And then all the migration tools are built to work with that, as well as on-premise deployments. So yes. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, Mark, but yeah.
No. I mean, the key element about EDB's Postgres in the cloud is it's the same Postgres. It's absolutely the same Postgres than what you run on-prem, in Kubernetes, in virtual machines, in bare metal. It is the same Postgres. So the same capabilities of understanding Oracle PLSQL, of understanding the Oracle ODBC, JDBC, and OCI interfaces is available on-prem, in the public cloud, in Kubernetes, everywhere. It's just the same Postgres everywhere.
That's a beautiful thing, and there's really compelling reason to go to Postgres, is that it really is available everywhere. Wherever you want to be, you can deploy it and get it there. So, and the cloud is certainly one of those options.
Thank you. And I think you briefly covered some of these early on, but another question is, how do you help with the applications migrations?
Yeah, so in that area, again, Oracle compatibility that we have is really important. And we have compatible drivers that you can plug into your application so that you don't have to rewrite a lot of your application code to make it work with EDB Postgres. The other thing we get with that is that many of your SQL statements that you were executing in your Oracle application will just work as is. There may be some updates you need to do, but by and large, it's going to be much less than if you didn't have that compatibility layer. We also offer other tools that allow you to work in, say, in the case of Oracle, in Oracle-like ways. Like SQL Plus is a common tool for scripting and for reporting purposes, and we have a tool called EDB Plus that understands a lot of that syntax. So again, it really reduces the amount of conversion you need to do for even those, what you might not consider maybe your application, but they're really things that support running your application. So those tools help out there. And then in the database itself, if you have PL SQL code as an example, we've implemented a version of that in our version of Postgres that allows you to run most of that without any updates. So that's how we support the applications.
Perfect. Thank you, Matt. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, but if you enter your question on the question field and has not been answered, we would get back to you via email when we share the recording. Here you can see we have a very detailed, a dive deep into the end-to-end methodology for migrating Oracle databases to Postgres. We're going to share that. There's a lot more detail there. If your question did not get answered, we will get back to you. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to contact us via email, via our website. We are available. Thank you very much, Mark and Matt. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And we hope everyone has a good rest of the day. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Cecilia.